I am Dr. Laura Moreno, and in this video, I want to talk to you about coffee, one of the most consumed beverages in the world, and at the same time, one of the most misunderstood. For some people, coffee is a daily pleasure. For others, it feels like a necessity. And for many, it's something that quietly affects their body in ways they don't immediately connect to that morning cup. Coffee can be beneficial or problematic, and the difference usually comes down to timing, dose, and how your own body responds. Coffee is not just a drink, it is an active substance that interacts with the nervous system, hormones, heart, digestion, and sleep, often for many hours after you drink it. That's why talking about coffee in simple terms like good or bad doesn't really help. Context is everything. Let's start with what coffee actually does in the body. The main active compound, caffeine, blocks a molecule called adenosine. Adenosine is what builds up in the brain throughout the day and makes you feel sleepy. When caffeine blocks it, the brain feels more alert, more awake, and more focused. This is why coffee can improve concentration, reaction time, and mental clarity, especially in the morning. For many people, this effect is genuinely helpful. A moderate amount of coffee can enhance cognitive performance, improve mood, and make it easier to start the day. Coffee also contains antioxidants that may have protective effects over time. So, yes, coffee can absolutely be part of a healthy lifestyle. Problems usually begin when coffee is used to compensate for deeper issues: poor sleep, chronic stress, irregular meals, emotional overload. Coffee can temporarily mask fatigue, but it does not fix its cause. When coffee becomes the main way to function, the body often pays the price later. One of the most common mistakes is drinking coffee immediately after waking up. When you wake up, your body naturally produces cortisol, a hormone that helps you feel alert and ready to start the day. If you add caffeine right away, you interfere with that natural rhythm. Over time, this can increase dependence on coffee just to feel normal in the morning. For many people, the ideal time for the first cup is about 60 to 90 minutes after waking, when natural cortisol levels start to decline. At that point, coffee often feels more effective and causes fewer side effects. Dose is another key factor. Many people underestimate how much caffeine they consume. Coffee sizes vary, brewing methods vary, and caffeine content can differ widely. Add tea, energy drinks, sodas, or supplements, and the total intake can climb quickly without you realizing it. For most healthy adults, a moderate intake is usually somewhere between 1 and 3 cups a day, depending on the person. But tolerance is highly individual. Some people feel fine with very little, others with more. The body always gives signals when the dose is too high. If after coffee you feel shaky, anxious, irritable, nauseated, have a racing heart, sweating, or digestive discomfort, those are not things to ignore. They are signs that the amount or timing is not right for you. Coffee has a strong effect on the digestive system. It stimulates stomach acid production and intestinal movement. For some people, this supports regular bowel movements. For others, it causes acid reflux, gastritis, stomach pain, or discomfort, especially when taken on an empty stomach. Drinking coffee on an empty stomach is particularly problematic for people with sensitive digestion. While some tolerate it well, many develop symptoms gradually and don't immediately connect them to coffee. The cardiovascular effects of coffee also deserve attention. Caffeine can temporarily raise blood pressure and heart rate. In healthy individuals with moderate intake, this is usually short-lived. But in people with hypertension, anxiety, or heart rhythm issues, the effect can be stronger and more noticeable. Sleep is another area where coffee has a powerful but often underestimated impact. Even if you think coffee no longer affects your sleep, caffeine can stay active in the body for 6 to 8 hours, sometimes longer. You may fall asleep, but the quality of deep, restorative sleep can be reduced. Poor sleep then leads to more fatigue the next day, which leads to more coffee, creating a cycle that many people don't recognize. Coffee also stimulates the release of stress hormones like adrenaline. In small amounts, this can feel energizing. In excess, it can keep the body in a constant state of alert. Over time, this may contribute to anxiety, tension, and emotional irritability. There is also a hormonal aspect. Repeated stimulation throughout the day keeps the stress response active. This doesn't mean coffee damages the body, but it does mean the body never fully settles into recovery mode. Coffee can interfere with the absorption of certain minerals, especially iron. Drinking coffee with meals can reduce iron absorption, which matters particularly for people with iron deficiency or anemia. Separating coffee from meals can help reduce this effect. Not everyone processes caffeine the same way. Genetics play a big role. Some people metabolize caffeine quickly, others very slowly. This explains why one person can drink coffee late and sleep fine, while another struggles after a midday cup. The type of coffee matters too. Very dark roasts, poor quality coffee, or very strong preparations can be more irritating. Adding large amounts of sugar, syrups, or heavy cream also changes the metabolic impact completely. Coffee should not be used to ignore body signals. If you need coffee just to function, if you get headaches when you skip it, or if you feel exhausted without it, that suggests dependence. That's not a judgment, but it is information. Reducing coffee doesn't mean stopping suddenly. Abrupt withdrawal can cause headaches, fatigue, and irritability. Gradual reduction is much gentler on the body. For some people, changing the timing matters more than reducing the amount. For others, reducing the dose matters more than the timing. There is no single rule. Coffee can be enjoyable, supportive, and even beneficial when used consciously. It becomes problematic when it's used to override the body's need for rest, nourishment, and balance. The most important question to ask yourself is not, is coffee good or bad, but how does coffee affect me? When do you feel your best with it, and when does it start to cost you? As you begin to notice how your body responds to coffee, the timing, the dose, the effect on your sleep, mood, digestion, and energy, you start making more informed choices, opening the door to understanding not only coffee itself, but also the deeper patterns of energy, stress, and recovery that shape how your body truly feels day to day. And once you start paying attention to those patterns, something important becomes clear. Coffee doesn't act in isolation. Its effects depend heavily on what's happening around it. What you ate, how you slept, how stressed you are, how hydrated you are, and even your emotional state that day all influence how coffee will feel in your body. One very common situation is using coffee to push through mental or emotional exhaustion. When the brain is overloaded, coffee can feel like it helps you power through, but underneath, the nervous system is already stretched. In that state, caffeine often amplifies tension rather than providing true clarity. You may feel more alert, but also more scattered, more reactive, less patient. Many people mistake stimulation for energy. Stimulation is temporary and borrowed. Real energy comes from recovery. When coffee is layered on top of chronic sleep deprivation, the body enters a cycle where it never fully catches up. Over time, this can show up as constant fatigue that doesn't improve even with more coffee. Another subtle effect of coffee is how it influences blood sugar. In some people, caffeine can cause a rise in blood sugar or interfere with insulin sensitivity, especially when consumed without food. This can lead to a brief sense of alertness followed by a crash, hunger, or irritability later on. That crash is often misinterpreted as a need for another cup. This is why pairing coffee with some food, especially protein or healthy fats, can make a noticeable difference. It slows the stress response and creates a more stable energy curve. Coffee alone hits harder. Coffee with support is gentler. The timing of coffee later in the day deserves special attention. Many people say, I can drink coffee at 4 p.m. and still fall asleep. Falling asleep is not the same as sleeping well. Caffeine can reduce deep sleep and REM sleep without fully preventing sleep onset. You may not notice it consciously, but your body does. Reduced sleep quality accumulates. One slightly worse night doesn't feel dramatic. Several in a row change how your nervous system functions. Mood becomes flatter or more irritable. Focus decreases, stress tolerance drops, and the instinctive response is, again, more coffee. There's also the issue of internal pressure. Coffee increases alertness, but in people who already live with a high baseline of stress, that alertness can feel like internal noise. Thoughts race, the body feels on, relaxation feels harder to access. This is not because coffee is bad, but because it's amplifying an already activated system. In those cases, reducing the dose or switching to earlier hours can dramatically change how the body feels, sometimes within days. Another overlooked aspect is hydration. Coffee has a mild diuretic effect, especially in people who are not regular drinkers. Even in habitual drinkers, coffee often replaces water rather than adding to total fluid intake. Dehydration can worsen headaches, fatigue, palpitations, and even anxiety, symptoms that people often blame on other causes. Making a simple habit of drinking water before or alongside coffee can soften many of its negative effects. It's not complicated, but it's rarely done consistently. The social and emotional role of coffee also matters. Coffee is often tied to routine, comfort, connection, and identity. Morning coffee can feel grounding. A coffee break can feel like a pause in a busy day. Removing or changing that ritual can feel unsettling, even if the body would benefit from adjustment. That's why replacing coffee with nothing rarely works. Replacing it with another ritual often does. Herbal tea, a short walk, breathing, or even just sitting quietly can fill the same psychological space without the same physiological cost. Coffee quality is another variable. Low quality coffee, coffee that's been sitting for hours, or coffee made with very dark, harsh roasts can be more irritating to the stomach and nervous system. Sometimes changing the type of coffee makes more difference than changing the amount. Additives matter too. Sugar spikes, flavored syrups, and heavy cream turn coffee into a metabolic event rather than a simple stimulant. Those additions can drive energy crashes, weight gain, and inflammation over time. Some people notice that their tolerance to coffee changes with age. What worked at 25 may feel very different at 40 or 50. Hormonal shifts, changes in sleep, and stress levels all influence how caffeine is handled. This is why advice about coffee has to be personal. Population level statements don't replace individual observation. Your body's feedback is more valuable than any general rule. It's also important to notice signs of subtle dependence, not extreme addiction, but the quiet kind. Needing coffee to feel human, feeling dull or irritable without it, headaches that appear when intake drops. These are not failures, but signals that the nervous system has adapted. Gradual reduction often brings surprising benefits. People report calmer mornings, steadier energy, fewer afternoon crashes, and better sleep within weeks. Others find that simply moving coffee earlier in the day is enough. The goal is not abstinence. The goal is alignment. Using coffee when it truly supports you, not when it pushes you past your limits. When coffee works with your body, not against it, it feels clean, focused, enjoyable. When it works against your body, it feels edgy, draining, and destabilizing. And as you continue to explore that difference through your own experience, you begin to see coffee not as something you automatically reach for, but as a conscious choice, one that fits into a larger picture of how you manage energy, stress, and recovery in daily life, opening the way to deeper insight into what truly supports your well-being beyond any single drink. And that shift toward conscious choice is where real balance starts to appear. When coffee is no longer automatic, you begin to notice how many moments in the day you are using it as a reflex rather than a decision. That awareness alone often changes the relationship without forcing anything. One important detail many people overlook is how coffee interacts with the stress response over the long term. Every cup slightly stimulates the release of stress hormones. In a body that is already calm and well-rested, this stimulation can feel motivating and pleasant. In a body that is already overloaded, it can feel like adding fuel to a fire that's been quietly burning for years. This is why some people describe coffee as suddenly turning on them. They drank it for years without issues, and then one day it starts causing anxiety, palpitations, or digestive discomfort. The coffee didn't change. The internal environment did. Hormonal changes, especially related to age, sleep disruption, or prolonged stress, can reduce tolerance. The nervous system becomes less resilient, and substances that were once easily handled start to feel overwhelming. Listening to that shift instead of fighting it is a form of self-respect. Another subtle effect of coffee is how it narrows attention. While caffeine can improve focus on tasks, it can also reduce awareness of bodily signals. Hunger, fatigue, emotional overload can all be temporarily silenced. This is useful in short bursts, but problematic when it becomes the norm. Over time, this disconnect can lead to ignoring needs until they show up as stronger symptoms. Many people don't realize how tired they truly are until they reduce coffee and suddenly feel the accumulated exhaustion. Coffee also affects the rhythm of the day. Without noticing, some people structure their entire schedule around coffee availability. Morning coffee to start, midday coffee to keep going, afternoon coffee to avoid crashing. When energy depends on external stimulation, the body's natural rhythm becomes secondary. Rebuilding that rhythm doesn't require giving up coffee, but it does require letting the body lead again. That often starts with protecting sleep. Sleep is the foundation. No amount of coffee can replace it, and too much coffee actively undermines it. People who reduce late-day caffeine often report that their mornings become easier, not harder. Waking up feels more natural. The need for immediate stimulation decreases. Energy becomes more stable rather than spiky. Another aspect worth mentioning is how coffee affects digestion over the course of the day. While it can stimulate bowel movements in the morning, excessive use can irritate the gut lining, especially in people prone to reflux, gastritis, or IBS-like symptoms. This irritation can be subtle and chronic, not always painful, but enough to affect comfort and nutrient absorption. Some people experience bloating, loose stools, or abdominal discomfort hours after coffee and don't connect the two. Keeping a simple mental note of timing can reveal patterns that weren't obvious before. Coffee can also influence muscle tension. The stimulatory effect can increase baseline muscle tone, especially in the neck, shoulders, and jaw. People who grind their teeth or carry chronic tension often notice improvement when caffeine intake is adjusted. There's also an emotional layer. Coffee can amplify whatever emotional state is already present. If you're calm, it may enhance clarity. If you're anxious or overwhelmed, it may intensify that feeling. This is why the same cup feels different on different days. Understanding this helps break the idea that coffee has a fixed effect. It doesn't. It interacts with the moment. Some people find that alternating coffee days or reducing frequency gives their nervous system a break while still allowing enjoyment. Others switch between regular and half-caffeinated options. Flexibility is often more sustainable than rigid rules. The concept of a safe dose is useful as a guideline, but it's not a guarantee. Safety is not just about quantity, but about context, timing, and personal sensitivity. A dose that is fine for one person may be too much for another. The body's signals are consistent, even if we ignore them. Racing thoughts, shallow breathing, digestive upset, poor sleep, irritability. These are not random. They are feedback. When you start responding to that feedback with curiosity instead of judgment, change becomes easier. You're no longer trying to control yourself. You're collaborating with your body. Coffee doesn't need to disappear from your life to stop dominating it. Often, just reducing how often you use it to override tiredness is enough to restore balance. Many people are surprised to find that when coffee is no longer used to fight exhaustion, it becomes more enjoyable again. One cup feels like a choice, not a requirement. And in that place, coffee returns to what it can be at its best, a pleasant stimulant, a social ritual, a moment of focus rather than a constant push against the body's natural limits, allowing you to continue discovering how subtle daily choices shape your energy, your mood, and your health in ways that extend far beyond what's in your cup. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future videos where we explore everyday habits with clarity and balance. Share this video with someone who loves coffee and wants to understand how it truly affects the body. Leave your questions or experiences in the comments and join me as we continue learning how to make conscious choices that protect energy, sleep, and long-term health.